Dawn came hard and bright, the kind of winter light that did not warm but sharpened everything it touched. The pines stood packed and black, their needles heavy with snow that fell in small lazy avalanches whenever a branch shuddered in the wind. The road was no road at all now, only a scar through drifts and frozen ruts where men's boots and sled runners carved the same stubborn line forward. Robb Stark rode without speaking, his breath a steady white stream, his eyes fixed on the narrow gap of trees ahead as if he could force the north to open by staring. The ambush had left more than bodies behind. It had left a taste, Bolton fear, Bolton desperation, a bitterness that clung to tongues and made men swallow their own words. The dead had been theirs. That was the part that sat heaviest. Not Ironborn, not lions. Northmen in pink, convinced by a bastard's promise that flaying was safer than loyalty. They had taken one alive. The great John Umber dragged him by the collar at first, as if hauling a stubborn boar, until Robb ordered him bound properly and lifted onto a packhorse like a sack of grain. Even then the great John kept close, glaring at the captive with a hatred so loud it barely needed a voice. The man's face was bruised and smeared with blood. When he spat, the spit froze where it landed. His eyes darted constantly, not brave enough to hold anyone's gaze for long. By mid-morning Robb called a halt in a shallow clearing where the pines thinned and the snow lay less deep over hard ground. Men formed a tight ring, stamping feet, rubbing hands, glancing outward as if expecting the trees to sprout more knives. Gray wind paced the perimeter, silent, ears flicking, nose working the wind with the impatience of a predator forced to wait while humans spoke. They pulled the captive down and forced him to his knees. The great John Umber's hand hovered near his axe as if it ached not to fall. Robb dismounted and stood before the kneeling man. He did not draw his sword. He did not need to. His voice was enough. "Name," Robb Stark said. The man swallowed. "Harrion," he rasped, then flinched as if expecting a blow for the sound of his own name. "House," Robb Stark pressed. The man's eyes flicked toward the great John Umber, then to the snow. "No house," he muttered. Just men. Men who want to live. Men who ambush their king," Daisy Mormont said, her tone flat as ice. Harrion licked his lips. "Your grace is cursed," he whispered. "That's what they said. That's what the Septons said. They said the North would drown in blood if we followed you. They said the Seven had turned their face." Robb Stark's gaze did not change. "Who said?" he corrected softly. Harrion's throat bobbed. "Ramsay Snow," he whispered, "and his riders. They came to Barrowton roads. They came to Holdfast. They left," he choked, eyes closing. "They left skins on posts. They said the Dreadfort has a lord now. They said the flayed man will protect the North from the wolf's curse." Catelyn Stark felt something cold crawl up her spine. Not fear of Ramsay's knives. Fear of how easily starving men could be turned by a story.
Robb Stark stepped closer.
"Where is Ramsay Snow?" he asked, voice quiet. Harrion's eyes opened, glassy. "Winterfell," he whispered. "He's at Winterfell." The word hit the clearing like a stone dropped in a still pond. Men's breath seemed to catch. Even the oxen shifted, snorting as if they sensed the weight in the air.
Robb Stark's jaw tightened.
"Who holds it?" he asked. Harrion shuddered. "Bolton men," he said. "Some Iron Men too, prisoners. He keeps them in cages. He keeps..." His voice broke. "He keeps hostages. Serwyn boys, tall heart men, a woman from Barrow Hall's kitchens. He says he'll flay one a day until the North kneels." The great John Umber made a sound that was not quite a growl and not quite a sob. He took a step forward, axe half lifted. Robb Stark raised a hand. The great John froze, trembling with fury. Harrion looked at Robb with desperate hope. "I didn't want to," he rasped. "I didn't." But he sent a man back with half his face. He said that's what happens to those who hesitate. He said your wolf would eat our children if we kept you fed. He said whatever would make you pick up a crossbow. Robb Stark cut in, and his voice was suddenly colder than the snow. And you did. Harrion flinched, tears freezing on his lashes. I'm sorry, he whispered. Robb Stark stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked around at his men, at their hollow eyes, their raw cheeks, their hands cracked from cold and war. This is what we fight now, Robb Stark said. Not to Harrion, but to all of them. Not only blades, not only Iron Men. Fear, lies. A bastard wearing a dead lord's name like a stolen cloak. Grey Wind stopped pacing and stood still, body angled north. The direwolf's low rumble rolled through the clearing, a sound that vibrated in chests. Robb Stark turned back to Harrion. You will live, he said, and Harrion's eyes widened in shocked relief until Robb continued. You will live to carry a message. You will go to the nearest holdfast and tell them this. Robb Stark is not cursed. Robb Stark is coming. And if Ramsay Snow flays one hostage, Robb Stark will hang 10 of his men from Winterfell's walls. Harrion swallowed hard. He'll kill me, he whispered. Then run faster, Robb Stark said. He stepped back, voice rising just enough for the whole column to hear. We march, Robb Stark said. We do not stop again until Winterfell's smoke is in our faces. The ring of men broke, saddles creaked, sleds lurched forward, and Grey Wind ran north, a gray streak against white, as if the direwolf could already see the castle that had raised him and the monster waiting inside it. Barrowton did not greet wolves with open arms. Barrow Hall rose behind its walls like a dark thought. Stone piled against wind, banners limp in the cold, smoke from chimneys thin as if the castle rationed warmth. The gatehouse was crowded with guards, their breath pluming white, their hands on spear shafts. No one cheered when Robb Stark's banners appeared. No one wept with relief. They watched as if watching a storm approach, uncertain whether it would bring rain they needed or lightning that would burn them. Lady Barbary Dustin stood above the gate, fur-wrapped and hard-eyed, her face pale against her dark hair. She was not old, not truly, but grief had a way of sharpening a woman into something that seemed carved rather than grown. She looked down at Robb Stark like a judge who had not yet decided whether to condemn. Robb Stark, she called, voice-carrying. She did not say your grace. She did not say king. You ride hard for a cursed man. A murmur ran among her men, uneasy, hungry for whichever story would keep them alive. Robb Stark rode forward alone, Catelyn Stark keeping pace a half-length behind despite Dacey's quiet protest. The great John Umber's glare could have split stone, but Robb ignored it. He stopped within bowshot and tilted his head up, meeting Lady Barbary Dustin's gaze with calm he did not feel. I ride hard for Winterfell, Robb Stark said, and for every northern child Ramsay Snow threatens to flay in my name. Barbary Dustin's eyes flickered at the name, not fear, interest. Ramsay Snow, she echoed. A bastard's name. A bastard with knives and hostages inside my home, Robb Stark said. Barbary Dustin's mouth curved slightly, not a smile. Home, she repeated, and something sharp threaded through the word. You speak of home as if it belongs to you by right and not by blood spilled for it. Catelyn Stark felt heat rise under her ribs, anger flaring. She remembered this woman's hatred, the old wound that never closed. Brandon Stark's bones, left behind. A husband's death that was blamed on Eddard Stark. Grief did not listen to reason. Robb Stark's voice stayed even. I did not come to trade old grief, he said. I came to ask you to choose the North over a bastard's fear. Barbary Dustin's gaze slid briefly to Catelyn Stark, and the temperature seemed to drop. And you bring a Southron lady to teach me what the North is, she said, voice smooth as ice. Catelyn Stark's fingers tightened on her reins. She wanted to answer. She wanted to tell this woman that she had bled for the North too, that grief did not grant the right to sell children to monsters. But Robb Stark's hand lifted slightly, a silent restraint, and she swallowed her words like bitter medicine. Barbary Dustin leaned forward on the parapet. The faith says you are cursed, she said. The realm says you broke guest right. My men whisper that wolves bring ruin. And Ramsay Snow, her eyes glittered. Says he will spare Barrowton if I do not open my gates to you. The great John Umber growled, unable to keep silence. He'll spare you until he's bored, he rumbled. Then he'll wear your skin like a cloak. Barbary Dustin's gaze flicked to him. Bold words from an Umber, she said. Your house always loved loudness. Daisy Mormont's voice cut through, quiet but deadly. Loudness is honest, she said. Ramsay Snow isn't. Barbary Dustin's eyes narrowed, weighing Robb. What do you want? She asked, and the question sounded like a blade being drawn. Food, Robb Stark said. Horses, men who still remember what Stark means. And information. I want to know which roads Ramsay Snow watches, which holdfasts he has bled, which houses he has bought. Barbary Dustin's laugh was small and bitter. And if I refuse? She asked. Robb Stark held her gaze. Then I march anyway, he said, and Winterfell burns longer. Silence. Wind. The faint creak of timbers in the gatehouse. Gray wind paced beneath the wall, and his gaze fixed on a carved post near the road where a flayed man's symbol had been cut deep into the wood. The direwolf's lip curled. A low rumble came from his chest, not loud, but constant, like a warning the earth itself might heed. Barbary Dustin's eyes followed Gray Wind's gaze. For a heartbeat, something uncertain flickered in her face. Recognition, perhaps, that a flayed man on a post was not protection but a threat aimed at everyone. You are not your father, Barbary Dustin said suddenly, and the words landed with strange weight. Robb Stark did not flinch. No, he agreed. My father would have trusted you not to open your gates to monsters. I am less trusting. Barbary Dustin's mouth tightened. Eddard Stark never brought my lord husband's bones home, she said, voice low now, more dangerous because it held old pain. He left me with an empty tomb and a hatred that kept me warm through winters. Catelyn Stark's breath caught, because she saw the truth of it. A grief that had become a hearth. Robb Stark's gaze softened only a fraction. I cannot give you bones, he said. I can give you a north that still belongs to northerners, not bastards and ironmen. Barbary Dustin stared down at him for a long moment. Then she lifted her hand. The gatehouse horns sounded. The portcullis creaked upward, slow and reluctant. The gates swung open like a mouth deciding whether to bite or speak. Enter, Barbary Dustin called, voice hard. Take what you need. But know this, Robb Stark. If you bring ruin to Barrowton, I will curse your name with the last breath in my lungs. Robb Stark nodded once, as if accepting a debt he could not avoid. Then help me keep ruin out, he said. They rode through, and Catelyn Stark felt the chill of Barrow Hall's shadow fall over them like a cloak. In that shadow lived grudges, and in grudges lived the cracks Ramsay Snow would try to widen. Robb Stark had stepped into another kind of trap, not of crossbows and songs, but of memory and hatred, and he wowed. D'ye have to survive it too? Barrow Hall's warmth was the warmth of a grudging host. Fires lit because cold killed, not because welcome was offered. The solar smelled of wax and old wood, and the air held that dry tang of stored grain that made hungry men's eyes sharpen. Barbary Dustin did not offer wine. She offered information. It was the only gift she could give without feeling like she betrayed her own grief. She spread a map over the table. Rough, inked by a steady hand, marked with small circles where villages had burned and X's where bodies had been found. A road here, a river there, a line of trees that served as boundary more in men's minds than on the ground. Ramsay Snow rides with 30 at most, Barbary Dustin said, tapping the map with a gloved finger. But he doesn't need more. He rides to a holdfast with a raven already sent ahead. He arrives with a story already in men's mouths. He offers protection from you. Her eyes lifted, sharp. He knows fear moves faster than armies. Robb Stark listened without blinking. Where is he now? He asked. Barbary Dustin's finger slid north. Winterfell, she said. He came after the Iron Men left their mess. He came with Bolton men, with men from houses that hated your father enough to kneel. Her mouth tightened. He took the castle not with siege engines, but with hunger and promises. He said he would spare those who opened gates. He flayed those who didn't. Simple. Catelyn Stark's nails dug into her palm under the table. Winterfell's gates opened by fear. She tasted bile. Daisy Mormont's voice was flat. "Hostages," she said. Barbary Dustin nodded once. "Yes," she said, and gestured to a steward who stepped forward, parchment in hand. The steward's face was pale, his eyes avoiding everyone's gaze. "Read," Robb Stark said. The steward swallowed. "Serwyn boys," he began. 2 tall heart men, 4 a Glover cousin, 3 Barrowton youths taken off the road, and, his voice cracked, a woman from the kitchens. Her husband spoke too loudly. The great John Umber made a low sound. "He's feeding on the small," he growled. "He's building an army from fear and bones." Robb Stark's gaze stayed on the list. "What does he demand?" Robb asked, though he already knew. Barbary Dustin's eyes glittered. "He demands you," she said simply. "He says if Robb Stark comes to Winterfell, he will give him welcome." Her mouth twisted. "He uses your own home's name like a lure." Catelyn Stark felt her throat tighten. Welcome, another roof, another promised safety. Robb Stark's voice was quiet. "I will not eat his bread," he said. Barbary Dustin's brow lifted slightly, the first sign of something like respect. "Good," she said, "because he will poison it with more than food." Grey Wind lay near Robb's chair, head on his paws, eyes open. The direwolf watched Barbary Dustin with the same unblinking focus Robb wore. Sometimes it felt as though wolf and king shared one instinct between them. Robb Stark leaned over the map. "These houses," he said, finger tracing names. "Ryswell, Dustin, Hornwood's remnants. Who rides with him willingly? And who rides because he holds their son's skin in his hand?" Barbary Dustin hesitated, and Catelyn Stark saw the cost of this moment. Loyalty to the North meant betraying neighbors. Yet Barbary Dustin's grief had never protected her people from flayed men nailed to trees. "Some hate you," Barbary Dustin admitted. "Some fear you. Most only want to survive winter." She met Robb's gaze. "If you offer them a path where survival doesn't require kneeling to a bastard, they'll take it." Robb Stark nodded once. "Then we offer it," he said. "We take Winterfell back fast. We do it clean. We do it in a way the North can believe." The great John Umber snorted. "There's no clean when bastards flay," he said. "No," Robb agreed. "But there's clear." Catelyn Stark leaned forward, voice low. "And Barrowton," she said to Barbary Dustin. "If Ramsay Snow falls, what will you do?" Barbary Dustin's gaze flicked to her, cold returning. "If he falls," she said, "I will decide what I do when I see the body." Daisy Mormont's eyes narrowed. "He won't fall if you hesitate," she warned. Barbary Dustin's lip curled. "I am not hesitating," she said. "I opened my gates, didn't I? I fed your men." Her voice sharpened. "Don't mistake hatred for disloyalty. Hatred can be useful. Keeps a blade steady." Robb Stark rose. "Then keep yours steady," he said. "Because when we march, every house will watch. Some will decide in that moment whether Stark still means winter's shelter or only war's ruin." Grey Wind stood as well, stretching, and the room seemed to shrink around the direwolf's presence. Barbary Dustin's steward took an unconscious step back. Outside, the wind battered Barrow Hall's walls. Inside, a map waited, inked with roads and blood, and Robb Stark felt the familiar tightening in his chest. The moment before a decision became a march, before a march became a battle, before a battle became a story someone else would try to twist. He placed his finger on Winterfell and pressed down hard enough to wrinkle parchment. "We go," Robb Stark said. Ramsay Snow loved winter because screams carried farther in cold air. In the Dreadfort's courtyard, torches threw thin light over cages lined along the wall. Inside them, men and boys huddled in straw, their breath steaming, their eyes wide. Some whispered prayers. Some stared into nothing. One boy rocked back and forth with a silent rhythm. as if motion could keep fear from freezing into his bones. Ramsay Snow walked among them with hands clasped behind his back, almost leisurely, like a lord inspecting livestock. Theon Greyjoy shuffled beside him, shackled, head bowed, flinching whenever Ramsay's boots crunched on frost too close. "You hear that?" Ramsay Snow murmured, and tilted his head as if listening to music. The wind whistled through the courtyard stones. Far away, a wolf howled. It might have been real. It might have been only the memory of wolves in men's minds. Ramsay smiled anyway. Theon Greyjoy said nothing. His throat worked, dry, and his eyes stayed fixed on the ground as if the frost patterns there were safer than Ramsay's face. A Bolton man approached, breath steaming, and knelt. "My lord," he said, voice low. "Word from Barrowton." Robb Stark marched through. Ramsay Snow's smile widened until it looked almost like delight. "Did he?" Ramsay said softly. "Did Lady Barbary Dustin feed him well?" The man swallowed. "She opened her gates," he admitted. Ramsay Snow's eyes flicked to the nearest cage. A Serwyn boy stared back, trembling. Ramsay crouched, hands on his knees, bringing his face level with the boy's. "Did you hear that?" Ramsay whispered to him. "Your king is coming. Oh, isn't that sweet?" The boy's lips trembled. "Please," he whispered. Ramsay Snow's smile remained. "Please is such a thin word," he said. He rose and turned away, suddenly bored, as if the boy's terror had already been consumed. He walked to a raven cage near the courtyard center. One raven flapped inside, angry and trapped. Ramsay opened the cage door and let the bird hop out onto his gloved hand. The raven pecked at his fingers. Ramsay laughed softly, unbothered. A message strip lay ready on a table, a scrap of parchment, ink still wet. Ramsay tied it to the raven's leg with careful fingers. Theon Greyjoy's voice came out as a rasp. What does it say?" he whispered, unable to stop himself. Ramsay Snow looked at him, eyes bright. "Welcome home, King," Ramsay said, and the gentleness in his tone was worse than cruelty. "Isn't that polite?" Theon Greyjoy flinched as if struck. Ramsay Snow lifted the raven to his lips and murmured, "Fly," then tossed it into the air. The bird beat its wings hard and vanished into night. Above them, Bolton archers stood ready on a balcony, silhouettes against torchlight, bows strung. Ramsay looked up at them and smiled. "Winterfell," Ramsay Snow said softly, as if savoring the name. "We'll make it beautiful." He turned to Theon Greyjoy and grabbed his jaw, forcing Theon's face up. Theon's eyes were wet, terrified. "Tell me the crypts," Ramsay Snow whispered. "Tell me every way a wolf might slip inside his den without knocking." Theon Greyjoy's lips shook. He rasped. Ramsay's fingers tightened. Not enough to break, only enough to promise. "You will," Ramsay Snow said, "because if you don't, we'll take one of those boys and we'll make him scream until you remember." Theon Greyjoy's eyes closed, a tear freezing on his cheek. There's a way," he whispered. Ramsay Snow released him and stood satisfied. "Good," he said. "Now we plan." The cages rattled as someone inside sobbed. Ramsay Snow breathed in the cold air like a man tasting wine. "Let him come," Ramsay Snow murmured. "Let him bring his wolf. I've always wanted to see a king bleed in his own yard." They camped without comfort, because comfort made men soft and softness made men dead. Robb Stark's column left Barrowton before dawn, taking grain and salted meat and fresh horses, leaving behind a castle full of eyes that watched their backs with a mix of dread and grudging hope. Barbary Dustin rode with them for half a day, not in the column, but along its edge, her riders trailing like a dark shadow. She had not promised loyalty, she had promised necessity. In winter, necessity could look a lot like faith until the moment it didn't. Snow fell in thin, sharp needles by evening, driven sideways by wind that tasted of open fields and distant smoke. They made camp in a shallow dip where hills broke the worst of the gusts. Men dug trenches for fires so the light would not carry far. The flames burned low, orange eyes half-lidded, and the smoke hugged the ground like a secret. Catelyn Stark sat near one of the fire trenches with her cloak pulled tight, hands extended toward heat that barely reached her fingers. The cold had settled into her joints, a deep ache that felt older than her years. Around her, men spoke in murmurs, voices hoarse from wind, from lack of sleep, from holding fear in their throats like swallowed stones. Daisy Mormont moved through the camp like a blade, quiet, purposeful, speaking to scouts who came in with snow on their brows and frost on their lashes. Each time a scout leaned close to her, Catelyn felt her chest tighten, waiting for words like flayed, burned, hostage, trap. The great John Umber sat on a log near another trench, sharpening his axe with slow ferocity. The scrape of stone on steel was steady, relentless, like a heartbeat you could not ignore. He looked up whenever anyone mentioned Winterfell, his eyes burning with something that was almost grief. Grey Wind stood at the edge of camp, silent, head lifted. The dire wolf did not sleep. He did not even lie down. He watched the dark beyond their trench fires as if expecting it to blink and reveal teeth. Robb Stark walked the camp's perimeter without cloak over his mail, as if refusing warmth by choice could make him harder. His face was pale in firelight, the lines under his eyes deeper. He stopped near Catelyn and crouched, the king briefly becoming a son close enough to touch. "You should sleep," he said softly. Catelyn Stark almost laughed. "In this?" she whispered, gesturing at wind and snow and the knowledge of Ramsay Snow's name waiting ahead. Robb's mouth tightened. "I'll have guards doubled," he said, as if that solved the problem that lived in mines, not trees. Catelyn reached up and touched his glove, fingers numb. "You haven't eaten enough," she said, and heard the mother in her voice, stubborn and helpless. Robb Stark looked away, toward the darkness. "I'll eat when Winterfell's gates are ours," he said, and the words were sharp with vow. Across the camp, Barbary Dustin watched from horseback, her cloak like a dark wing. She did not come close. She did not share fire. She observed, weighing every gesture, every murmur, as if deciding whether Stark's strength was real or merely a story. A scout arrived then, stumbling through drifts. Daisy caught him by the arm. He spoke fast, breath ragged, eyes wide. Catelyn saw Daisy's expression tighten. Daisy came to Robb Stark. "Your Grace," she said quietly. "Winterfell's outer villages are silent. No lights, no smoke in chimneys. The road is watched. Bolton riders move in pairs. And..." She hesitated once. "There are cages on the road posts." Catelyn's stomach dropped. "Cages?" she whispered. Robb Stark's face went still. "How many?" he asked. "3 that my scouts saw," Daisy said. "Men inside, alive, barely." The great John Umber's axe scrape stopped. The camp seemed to hold its breath. Robb Stark looked toward Grey Wind, who stood rigid at the camp's edge, ears pricked. "Ramsay Snow wants me to see them," Robb Stark said quietly. "He wants me to rush." Catelyn Stark rose slowly, her joints protesting. "Then don't," she said, voice shaking but fierce. "Don't rush. Don't take his bait." Robb Stark's eyes met hers. In them was the war. Every choice, every death, every line crossed to keep breathing. "I won't rush," he said, "but I won't stop." He turned to Daisy. "We move before dawn," he ordered. "We take the road fast, quiet. We don't touch anything that looks like a gift. We don't open gates without knowing what waits behind them." Daisy nodded, grim. "Aye." Robb Stark straightened and looked out into the night as if he could see Winterfell's broken towers through miles of snow. His voice carried just enough for men near him to hear. "No more songs," he said. "No more hospitality. No more pretending monsters care about rules." The great John Umber's axe scrape began again, louder now, as if the steel itself agreed. And somewhere beyond the hills, a raven flew through winter dark, carrying a message written by a bastard's hand, while a wolf king built his own answer in silence. They moved before the sky remembered color. The camp had broken in silence. Men stamping out trench fires, shoulders hunched, breath steaming through scarves. The snow was thinner here, blown into uneven drifts by wind that cut between hills like a blade. Even horses walked carefully, ears pinned back, as if they knew the ground ahead was not only cold but watched. Robb Stark rode at the front, not because kings were meant to be seen, but because Ramsay Snow had demanded to be answered by the face of the man he was trying to turn into a ghost story. The direwolf banner snapped above them with a soft, relentless crack, and each snap felt like a heartbeat refusing to stop. Daisy Mormont ranged ahead and to the flanks, her scouts slipping between pines like dark thoughts. They returned in quick bursts, murmuring to her in low voices, and each time Daisy's expression tightened, Robb felt the tightening spread through the column like a pulled cord. The road posts appeared first as black lines in the pale distance, uprights against white, too straight to be trees, too deliberate to be anything but a message. Gray wind caught the scent before any man saw the iron, and the direwolf stopped abruptly, body rigid, ears forward. The column slowed at once. Men went quiet by instinct, the way prey goes quiet when it knows a predator has decided. As they drew close, the iron became clear. 3 cages hung from a crossbeam, swaying slightly in the wind. The metal bars were rimed with frost, and ice clung to them where breath had condensed and frozen. Inside each cage huddled a shape, too still, too thin, too human. The great John Umber made a sound like a wounded animal. Wendell Manderly's face went gray beneath his beard. Catelyn Stark's hands tightened on her reins until the leather creaked. Robb Stark lifted a hand, halting the column a bowshot away. "No one runs to them," he said quietly, and the command was as much for himself as for his men. "No one touches the posts until we know what's on them." A Northman swallowed hard. "They're alive," he whispered, voice breaking. "Then we keep them alive," Robb Stark said, and his gaze never left the cages. Daisy Mormont approached at a trot, dismounting in a spray of powdery snow. She crouched, studying the ground, then the posts, then the crossbeam. "Tripwires," she murmured. "Thin, hard to see, and something buried near the base." "Bolton work," the great John Umber growled. "Ramsay Snow work," Daisy corrected, and the distinction mattered. Bolton had been a house. Ramsay was a knife that moved between ribs and smiled about it. Robb Stark slid down from his horse and stepped forward alone, slow, eyes scanning. Gray wind followed, shoulders low, teeth barely visible behind curled lips. The direwolf's growl was soft, but it vibrated like a threat the world could feel. Robb stopped a few paces from the nearest post. The cage's occupant shifted, a small, desperate movement. A face pressed weakly to the bars, eyes red and cracked-lipped. "Your Grace?" the man rasped, and the word came out like it had been torn through frost. Robb Stark did not answer at once. He looked at the iron, at the posts, at the ground that had been disturbed and repacked, and he felt the old lesson of the twins flare again. Nothing offered was simple. Everything was bait. "Daisy Mormont," Robb said softly without looking back. "Cut the wires, carefully, then we lift them down." Daisy nodded once. 2 scouts slid forward with knives and a length of cloth to mark what they found. They moved like men defusing a war's heartbeat. One wire gleamed when the light caught it, thin as hair. Another was buried under snow, found only because gray wind's nose dipped and the direwolf's growl deepened. When the wires were cut, the scouts dug at the base and found it. An iron pot packed with powder and nails, a crude bomb meant to tear legs from bodies when a cage was jolted free. Daisy's face tightened with controlled fury. "He wanted us to rush," she said. "He wanted to kill the men inside and the men who tried to save them." Robb Stark exhaled slowly, frost gathering on his lashes. "He doesn't get that," he said. They lifted the first cage down with ropes, lowering it gently into the snow. The man inside sagged, too weak to stand. His hands were raw, his wrists bruised where he had clung to bars. When the cage door opened, he fell forward like a sack, and Catelyn Stark stepped down and caught his shoulders before he could faceplant into ice. He looked up at her, eyes glassy. "Lady Catelyn Stark," he whispered, as if names were anchors. "Easy," she murmured, wrapping her cloak around him. "Breathe." Robb Stark knelt in front of the man. "Name," Robb said softly. "Harwin Serwyn," the man rasped. They took my brothers. Winterfell, they said." His eyes flicked to the posts as if expecting them to rise and bite. "They said you'd come and die."
Robb Stark's mouth tightened.
"Tell me what you saw," he said. Harwin Serwyn swallowed painfully. "Cages in the yard," he whispered. "Men in the kennels. Ramsay Snow. He laughs when they pray. He has archers on the broken towers. He said the Wolf King would be welcomed." His voice cracked. "He said he has a message for you." Robb Stark rose slowly, eyes cold. "He already gave it," Robb Stark said, and glanced at the cages. "And I answered by not stepping into it." Grey wind paced, still growling, but the growl had changed. Less warning now, more hunger. The dire wolf stared north, toward the unseen shape of Winterfell beyond trees and snow, as if he could smell stone and memory. Robb Stark turned to his men. "No shouting," he ordered. "No songs. No torches high. We move as if the trees belong to us, because they do." Men nodded, grim and silent. They took the freed prisoners onto sleds, wrapped in blankets, and pushed forward again. The cages were left behind, hanging empty, swaying like a failed threat, and the road continued, narrower as if it were funneling them into the teeth of home. Winterfell appeared the way a ghost does, sudden, impossible, familiar enough to hurt. They crested a ridge where the trees thinned, and below them the castle sprawled across the white land like a wounded animal. The outer walls were scarred and blackened, patched in places, broken in others. The broken tower the Ironborn had burned still stood like a snapped bone. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, thin and reluctant, and flayed man banners hung from the remaining towers, pink against snow, obscene in their cheerfulness. Catelyn Stark's breath caught. For a heartbeat she saw it as it had been. Stone warm with hearth fires, guards in stark colors, the yard alive with voices. Then the wind shifted, and the stink of old smoke and filth reached her, and the illusion shattered. Robb Stark did not move for a long moment. He stared down at the walls as if his gaze could mend them. Grey wind stood beside him, rigid, ears pricked, tail low. The direwolf's eyes fixed on the courtyard where something glinted. Iron cages, smaller than the ones on the road, arranged like decorations around the yard. The great John Umber's breathing turned harsh. "Let me storm it," he growled. "Let me break the gates and—" "No," Robb Stark said, and the single word stopped the great John the way a hand stops a blade. Robb's voice was quiet, but it carried. "He wants a storm." Daisy Mormont crouched, peering. "Archers on the south wall," she murmured, "and on the broken tower. He set them where the old stone gives cover." Barbary Dustin stood slightly apart, her cloak dark against the snow, her eyes unreadable. She stared at Winterfell as if staring at a rival. Something she hated, something she could not ignore. "He's inside your skin," Barbary Dustin said softly. "He's wearing your home like a mask." Wendell Manderly shifted, swallowing hard. "My father said Winterfell is the North's heart," he whispered. "If it beats wrong, everything else sickens."
Robb Stark's jaw tightened.
"Then we fix it," he said. A raven circled above the castle and landed on a parapet. Catelyn Stark watched the small black shape and thought of Sansa in the Great September, kneeling under a different kind of parapet, trapped by words instead of walls. Winterfell was trapped too, and words were part of the trap here as well. Cursed oathbreaker, monster. Robb Stark turned slightly, looking at his captains. "We do not rush to the gates," he said. "We do not stand in an open field where his archers can pick names out of us. We take the breaches. We take the places the Ironborn left broken." We take the yard before he can use his hostages as shields." The great John Umber's mouth twisted. "And the cages?" he asked, voice rough. Robb Stark's eyes darkened. "We free them," he said. "First." Daisy nodded. "Night entry," she said. "Small teams. Open away. Then dawn strike." Barbary Dustin's gaze flicked to Robb. "You trust night?" she asked. "In Winterfell?" The question carried poison, memory of wolves and betrayal, of doors opened by hands that should not have opened them. Robb Stark stared down at the castle. "I trust Grey Wind," he said. "And I trust that Ramsay Snow will underestimate anything that isn't loud." Grey Wind's ears twitched as if he understood his name. The direwolf's body leaned forward, eager, restrained only by Robb's hand resting on his fur. Catelyn Stark stepped closer to Robb, voice low. "He's waiting for you," she said. "For your face at his gate. For your rage." Robb Stark's gaze remained fixed on the castle. "He'll get my face," Robb Stark said quietly. "Just not where he expects it." Below, in the courtyard, a tiny movement caught the light. Someone shifting inside a cage, a hand gripping bars. The hand was small, a boy's.
Catelyn Stark's throat tightened painfully.
Robb's hand clenched once on Grey Wind's fur, and the direwolf's growl deepened. Robb Stark turned away from the ridge at last. "We move around," he said. "We make our own door." And Winterfell waited beneath the gray sky, a home turned into a snare, daring the Starks to come close enough to bleed. They made their planning camp in the teeth of the woods, close enough that Winterfell's torchlight flickered through the trees like watching eyes, far enough that arrows could not reach without luck. No fires, no laughter. Men huddled under cloaks and waited, sharpening steel with hands that shook more from anticipation than cold. Robb Stark knelt in the snow and used his knife to scratch a plan into the crust. Walls, breaches, the broken tower, the gatehouse, the courtyard cages marked as small squares. His breath fogged the lines and vanished. "The breach here," Daisy Mormont said, tapping the south wall mark. "Stone cracked from the Ironborn's old fire. A man can climb it if he's not fat and if he wants it enough." Wyman Manderly huffed, offended, then looked away as if to pretend he had not. "And here," Barbary Dustin said, pointing with a gloved finger to a smaller mark, "a service postern. It used to be for carts and refuse. The Iron Men found it once. Ramsay Snow will have it watched." "Then we don't use it first," Robb Stark said. "We use it second, once his eyes are pulled." The great John Umber paced like a caged beast, muttering threats under his breath. Twice he stepped toward the treeline as if he might charge anyway. Each time Daisy Mormont's hand shot out and caught his arm, not gently. "You charge," she hissed, "and those boys die before you reach the gate." That stopped him in a way Robb's authority alone could not. The Greyjoy's face contorted with rage, and he forced himself back, breathing hard as if he were swallowing fire. Catelyn Stark watched Robb, searching his face for the boy who had once run through this forest with snow on his hair. She found only the king, and the king's cold discipline frightened her almost as much as Ramsay's cruelty. "What about parley?" Wyman Manderly asked, voice low. "If you demand terms, if you—" Robb Stark's gaze snapped to him. "No," Robb Stark said. "No parley. Not at the gate. Not with hostages in sight. I will not stand under his arch and let him decide how my words end." Barbary Dustin's mouth twitched. "Good," she murmured. "He would love to make you beg. He would love to make your begging the story." Daisy leaned closer to the scratched plan. "We need eyes inside," she said. "We need to know where the hostages are held besides the yard cages." Robb Stark's gaze drifted toward the castle's broken tower. "I know one place he'll use," Robb said softly. "The kennels," Catelyn Stark whispered, and hate coiled in her voice. The thought of men and boys caged like animals in her home made her hands tremble. Robb Stark nodded once. "And the Great Hall," he said. "He'll want it. He'll want to sit where my father Saturday." Grey Wind's low rumble rose, as if the direwolf shared the image and hated it. A scout slipped in from the darkness, crouching low. His face was smeared with soot to kill shine, his eyes bright. "Your Grace," he whispered. Bolton guards rotate every half hour. The archers on the broken tower change less. And there's a man walking the wall who limps. Robb Stark's eyes narrowed. "A limp?" he asked. The scout nodded. "Older, northern, not Bolton-born. He carries himself like someone who hates being there." Barbary Dustin's gaze sharpened. "A coerced man," she murmured. "Ramsay Snow likes coerced men. They taste better when they break." Robb Stark stared at the torchlit wall beyond the trees. "We'll give him something else to break," Robb Stark said. He traced new lines in the snow. 2 teams, one for the breach, one to circle to the service postern when the yard erupts. Grey Wind goes with the breach team. He'll find cages faster than any man.
Catelyn Stark's stomach tightened.
"You're sending Grey Wind into the yard first," she said. Robb Stark's gaze flicked to her, and for a heartbeat the sun looked through the king's eyes. "He wants to go," Robb Stark said softly. "And I need him." Catelyn Stark swallowed because she understood. Wolves were not pets in war. They were weapons with hearts. Robb Stark rose slowly. "At first light," he said. "We strike before he expects dawn to mean anything but fear." The men around him nodded, faces taut. Somewhere in Winterfell, a bell rang faintly as a guard changed shift. The sound carried through snow and trees like a slow heartbeat. Robb Stark looked once more at the scratched plan, then wiped it away with his glove, erasing lines as if erasing uncertainty. "Tonight," he murmured, "we take our home back." Winterfell's great hall had survived fire, but it had not survived shame. The roof beams were patched, the stone walls blackened in places, and the long tables were scarred with knife marks that did not belong to feasts. Ramsay Snow sat in a high-backed chair dragged into place where the Lord's seat belonged, his boots propped casually on a footstool made from broken Stark furniture. Behind him hung the flayed man banner, pink and obscene against soot-dark stone. Theon Greyjoy stood to his right, shackled at the wrists, his hair ragged, his eyes hollow. He flinched whenever Ramsay shifted, like a man whose skin remembered pain before thought did. Bolton guards dragged a boy forward, one of the Cerwyn hostages, thin and shaking, chains clinking softly. The boy's lips were blue with cold. His eyes darted, searching for any face that looked kind. He found none. Ramsay Snow leaned forward, smiling as if watching a play. "What's your name?" he asked, voice gentle. The boy swallowed hard. "Darren Cerwyn," he whispered. "Darren Cerwyn," Ramsay repeated, savoring it. "A fine name, a northern name, a name your king will care about." His eyes glittered. "Do you think he's coming?" The boy's breath hitched. "Yes," he whispered, because hope was the only thing he could still afford. Ramsay laughed softly. "Good," he said. "I like hope. It makes the end sweeter." He gestured lazily, and a guard shoved the boy toward the center of the hall, beneath a patch of ceiling where a hole had been crudely repaired. Snow sifted down through a crack, landing on the boy's hair like ash. Ramsay's gaze shifted to the side of the hall where Ironborn prisoners were caged. Men with salt in their beards, faces bruised, eyes hard. They stared back at him with hatred that did not scare him because it could not reach him through bars. "One of them," Ramsay mused, pointing at an Ironborn reaver, "told me wolves are brave only when they hunt in packs." He smiled wider. "I told him wolves are brave when they know where the pack will step." Theon's throat worked. He stared at the floor. Ramsay leaned back and glanced toward a door at the hall's far end. "Have the archers ready," he said. "At dawn. I want them to see him." His eyes flicked to Darren Cerwyn. "I want him to see this." The boy's chains rattled as he trembled harder. Ramsay's gaze returned to Theon. "And you," Ramsay said softly, "you'll tell me again about the crypts." Theon's lips parted, a breathless sound scraping out. "Please," he rasped, not even sure what he was begging for anymore. Mercy, death, silence. Ramsay's smile did not change. He stood and crossed the hall with measured steps, boots crunching on scattered bits of charred wood. He stopped close to Theon and lifted the man's chin with 2 fingers. "Don't say please," Ramsay whispered. "Please is for men who might be heard." Theon's eyes filled, but he did not look away. He couldn't. Looking away meant punishment. Ramsay leaned in, voice intimate. "Your king thinks he's clever," Ramsay whispered. "He thinks he can come through the broken walls and surprise me." Ramsay's eyes glittered. "But Winterfell remembers every footstep, and I have your memories in my hand." Theon's breath shook. Somewhere deep inside him, something old and stubborn stirred. Winterfell stones, its Godswood, the way he had once walked its halls and pretended he belonged. That memory was poison now. Ramsay had turned it into a weapon. Ramsay released Theon and turned toward the boy again. "Dawn," Ramsay said brightly, as if announcing a holiday. "When the sun rises, we'll welcome Robb Stark properly." He clapped his hands once, sharp. Guards moved. The boy was dragged away, sobbing quietly. The Ironborn in cages spat curses. Theon Greyjoy stood in chains and stared at the floor, and Winterfell's hall listened to Ramsay's laughter the way it once listened to Stark vows. Forced, helpless, humiliated. Outside, beyond walls and snow and torchlight, a wolf king waited in darkness and refused to die politely. The night tasted of iron and pine. They moved to the breach without speaking, boots wrapped in cloth where they could be, breath kept shallow, the kind of quiet that felt unnatural to men who had spent their lives in loud halls and louder battles. Snow muffled sound, but it also betrayed. Each step left a mark. Robb Stark kept them close to trees where shadows broke outlines, where the wind carried their scent away in gusts. Daisy Mormont led, her hand lifted in signals more than words. The strike team was small men chosen for steadiness, not size, men who could climb without falling and kill without shouting. Robb went with them, not because a king should, but because Ramsay Snow's trap was built around the idea that Robb would be somewhere else, safe and predictable. Grey Wind went first. The dire wolf flowed through the night like a piece of darkness given muscles. He reached the breach and stopped, nose pressed to stone, ears flicking. He sniffed along the crack, then let out a low, vibrating rumble. Robb felt it in his bones, a warning, but not of men, of wrongness. "Hold," Robb whispered. Daisy crouched and found it. A thin smear of oil on stone, meant to make hands slip, meant to drop climbers into a pile at the base where crossbows could take them clean. She wiped it with snow, then motioned for ropes. They tossed grapnels up to jagged stone, and the hooks caught with soft clinks swallowed by wind. One by one the men climbed, fingers numbing, muscles burning, boots scraping carefully for purchase. Robb climbed last, his sword strapped across his back, his knife at his thigh, his breath steady despite the burn in his arms. At the top the breach opened into the inner yard's edge, where snow had been churned into gray slush by boots and animals. Torches flickered on the far wall. Somewhere inside, a man laughed. The sound was thin and cruel. Grey Wind slipped over the lip first, landing silently. He crouched low, scanning. Robb followed, crouching beside him. He could smell Winterfell's old smoke under the new stink, like a beloved cloak that had been dragged through filth. A shadow moved near a corner. Bolton guard, spear in hand, his breath steaming. Grey Wind tensed, but Robb's hand touched the wolf's shoulder, steadying. Robb signaled. A Stark man slid forward and put a knife into the guard's throat so cleanly the man only made a surprised gurgle. He sagged into the snow and lay still, eyes staring at a sky he could no longer see. They moved deeper. In the yard's center the cages were clearer now. Iron bars, bodies inside, small movements, faint sounds. A boy's sob, a man's whisper. Robb's chest tightened so hard it hurt. "Not yet," Daisy mouthed, her eyes fierce. "We open them when the yard erupts." Robb nodded. Ramsay Snow wanted spectacle. Robb would give him confusion instead. From the treeline outside, barely visible, Catelyn Stark watched. Her hands clasped so tightly her fingers ached. Wyman Manderly crouched beside her, jaw clenched, holding a lantern covered in cloth so only a sliver of light escaped. Barbary Dustin's riders waited with horses, silhouettes against snow, ready to move when the signal came. Inside the wall, Robb's strike team reached the service postern's bar. Daisy knelt, studying it. The iron was newer than the stone around it, hastily reinforced. Ramsay knew this door was a throat. She found a small gap where would met stone, slid a thin blade in, and pried. The bar shifted with a soft groan that made every heart seize. Gray wind froze, ears forward. No shout followed. No alarm. For now, the castle still slept under its own arrogance. Robb Stark breathed out slowly, tasting cold and smoke. He looked at the cages again and felt the old Stark vow rise in him like a buried blade. Winterfell was not a place. It was a promise to protect. He signaled once, sharp and silent, and the first step into Ramsay Snow's den was taken without a song. Dawn arrived like a knife drawn slowly from a sheath, cold, inevitable, and sharp enough to cut the world into clear lines. The signal was not a horn. It was Grey Wind's howl. It rose from the yard like a living thing, ripping through torchlit sleep, and for a heartbeat Winterfell seemed to remember what it had been. Wolves in its bones, Stark blood in its stones. Guards shouted, boots pounded, bolts clattered into crossbows. Ramsay Snow's carefully arranged calm fractured. Robb Stark surged through the service postern with his men, blade drawn now, breath steaming. The door's iron bar fell away, and more Northmen poured in like a flood that had been held back too long. Across the yard, the breach team struck at the archer's ladder, cutting rungs, shoving it so men fell hard into slush with screams muffled by shock. The great John Umber came through the breach like winter fury given a man's shape. He swung his axe and split a Bolton guard from collar to belly, roaring so loud it felt like a battle horn. Northmen behind him answered with a raw shout that had been held in their throats for days. Daisy Mormont moved with brutal precision, spear flashing, driving men back from the cages before any desperate hand could draw a knife to a hostage's throat. "Cages!" she snapped, and her men formed a wedge around the iron squares in the center of the yard. Barbary Dustin's riders came in from the east at the same moment, having found a weak section of wall where Ironborn fire had cracked stone. They poured through, spears leveled, cloaks snapping, their faces hard. Barbary Dustin herself rode in last, eyes like flint, and for a heartbeat Catelyn Stark saw something fierce in her. Not hatred now, but the cold satisfaction of striking a bastard who thought he could own the North Sphere. Bolton archers appeared on the wall, loosing bolts into the yard. One bolt struck a Northman in the shoulder. Another grazed a horse's flank. Men ducked and raised shields, pushing forward anyway. Grey Wind became a grey storm. He leapt onto a Bolton captain who was shouting orders, teeth sinking into the man's throat. The captain's cry cut off as blood sprayed onto snow. Grey Wind shook once, hard, and the man dropped. The direwolf's eyes snapped up, seeking the next threat. Catelyn Stark rushed toward the cages, ignoring shouts, ignoring the danger that still whistled from walls. Her hands were numb, but she grabbed at locks anyway, fingers fumbling. A boy inside one cage pressed his face to bars, eyes huge. "Lady," he whispered. "Hold on," she gasped, and slammed her shoulder against the cage door. It rattled but held. A Stark man shoved past, axe raised. "Stand back," he barked, and brought the axe down on the lock. Metal rang. The lock cracked. The door swung open. The boy fell into Catelyn's arms, sobbing silently, his body trembling like a trapped bird. She held him tight for a heartbeat, then shoved him behind her, toward men who would carry him to safety. Around them, Winterfell's yard became chaos. Bolton men trying to form a line, Northmen breaking it, Barbary Dustin's riders cutting down anyone in pink who hesitated. The flayed man banners whipped above it all, obscene and frantic. Robb Stark fought toward the Great Hall because he knew where Ramsay Snow would be. Monsters loved thrones, even makeshift ones. They loved being seen. A Bolton guard lunged at Robb with a short sword. Robb parried and shoved him into a wall, then drove his blade into the man's ribs. The guard slid down, leaving a smear of red on stone. "Winterfell!" someone screamed. Whether as rallying cry or prayer, Robb couldn't tell. He pushed forward anyway, eyes locked on the great hall's doors. Because Ramsay Snow's welcome waited inside, and Robb Stark had come to refuse it with steel. The great hall was a wound reopened. They burst through the doors and found chaos already blooming. Bolton guards scrambling, benches overturned, torches knocked to the floor so flame licked at straw and spilled ale. The air was thick with smoke and sweat. Snow blew in through cracks in patched roof beams, melting into damp streaks on stone. Robb Stark saw the high-backed chair at the dais empty. Ramsay Snow had moved. Of course he had. Monsters fled only when they meant to lure. A Bolton guard captain stepped into Robb's path, sword raised, eyes frantic. "For the Dreadfort!" he screamed, as if screaming could make a bastard's promise real. Robb Stark did not answer. He met the blade with steel, the impact jolting through his arms. The captain swung again, wild. Robb parried, stepped in, and slammed his shoulder into the man, driving him back into a table that splintered. The captain snarled and tried to stab low. Robb twisted, caught the blade on his guard, and shoved it aside, then cut across the man's forearm. Blood sprayed. The captain screamed, dropping his sword. Robb drove his blade into the man's chest and felt ribs give. The captain's scream turned into a wet gasp. He collapsed, eyes wide, as if shocked that loyalty to fear did not stop death. Daisy Mormont fought near the entrance, spear flashing, holding the hall's mouth open so Northmen could pour in without being bottled. The great John Umber slammed into a Bolton shield wall with his shoulder and axe, roaring, breaking it the way he'd broken Frey guards at the Twins. Raw strength and righteous fury tearing through men who had relied too long on the idea that no one would push back. Catelyn Stark moved through a side doorway with hostages clustered behind her. Boys and men and one woman sobbing into her sleeve. Stark guards herded them toward the yard, toward safety. Catelyn's hands shook, but she did not stop. She would not stop. Not now. Gray wind streaked across the hall's stone floor, nails clicking, body low. He ignored dead men and dying men. His eyes were fixed on one thing. A figure retreating through a side passage, cloaked in dark fur, moving fast. Ramsay Snow. Robb Stark saw him too, and something cold and vicious sharpened in him. After him, Robb roared, and the shout tore from him like a blade finally freed from a sheath. Ramsay Snow glanced back once, and his smile flashed even as he ran, bright, delighted. He wanted pursuit. He wanted Robb in a tunnel where surprises could bite. Robb did not slow. He charged after the bastard, boots pounding, sword in hand, gray wind ahead like a hunting arrow. The corridor narrowed, lit by torches that flickered in draft. Ramsay's men tried to block, two guards rushing forward with spears. Gray wind hit the first, snapping the spear shaft with his jaws and taking the man's throat. Robb cut the second down in one hard stroke that left the man crumpling against the wall. Ramsay Snow disappeared around a corner. Robb Stark rounded it and found a stairwell descending, stone steps slick with damp. The air below smelled older, colder, crypt air, Winterfell's bones. Catelyn Stark's voice echoed faintly from behind, shouting for someone to bring blankets, to keep the wounded warm. The hall behind them roared with battle. But here, on these steps, the sound changed, muffled, swallowed, as if the castle itself wanted what happened next kept secret. Gray wind hesitated at the top step, ears forward, hackles rising. The direwolf's growl rose again, deeper than before. Robb Stark's breath came hard. He stared down into darkness and felt the weight of Winterfell's crypts, the place of Stark dead, the place of vows whispered under stone. Ramsay Snow had chosen to run into the bones. Robb Stark tightened his grip on his sword. "He wants me afraid of my own home," Robb Stark whispered to Gray Wind, to himself, to the dead below. Gray Wind's eyes gleamed in torchlight. The direwolf took the first step down. Robb followed. The crypts smelled of damp stone and old grief. The statues of Stark kings lined the passage, their stone faces stern, their swords laid across laps, their eyes carved to watch forever. Torchlight made their shadows flicker, as if the dead shifted when no one looked directly. Water dripped somewhere in the dark, steady as a heartbeat. Robb Stark's breath sounded too loud here. He hated that. He had grown up beneath these stone faces. He had walked these halls as a boy, chasing his siblings, laughing, never imagining his home would become a hunting ground for a monster. Gray wind moved ahead, silent now, a dark shape between stone legs, nose low. The direwolf's hackles were raised. This place was not meant for living wolves. A sound echoed, chains clinking softly. Robb's eyes narrowed. He moved faster, boots slipping slightly on damp steps, torchlight wavering. They turned a corner and found Ramsay Snow. He stood beneath a Stark statue, his smile bright against the gloom. In front of him, pulled close, was Theon Greyjoy, shackled, trembling, eyes wild. Ramsay's arm was around Theon's throat like a lover's embrace. A knife rested against Theon's cheek, drawing a thin line of blood that looked black in torchlight. "Your Grace," Ramsay Snow said softly, as if greeting a guest in a hall. "Welcome home." Robb Stark's muscles tightened, but he did not step forward. Gray wind growled low, a sound that made even stone feel like it might crack. Ramsay's eyes flicked to the direwolf. His smile widened. "And the dog," he murmured. "I was hoping." Theon Greyjoy's eyes locked on Robb's, pleading without words. Robb saw the ruined man Theon had become, and beneath that ruin he saw something else. Shame, yes, but also terror so deep it had eaten everything else. Catelyn Stark's footsteps sounded behind Robb, hurried, and then she was there, a torch in her hand, her face pale. Barbary Dustin appeared at the stair behind her, dagger drawn, eyes narrowed as if she did not trust even the dead. "Get back!" Robb hissed without turning, and Catelyn stopped, jaw clenched. Ramsay Snow laughed softly. "Oh," he said, "bring your mother too. This really is a Stark reunion." Robb Stark's voice was cold. "Release him," Robb said. Ramsay's eyes glittered. "Why?" He asked lightly. "He's not yours. He's mine." His knife pressed a fraction harder, and Theon Greyjoy whimpered, the sound small and broken. Robb Stark took a slow breath. "You want me," Robb said. "You want my rage. You want my story to end with me bleeding under my own roof." His gaze locked on Ramsay's. "You don't get it." Ramsay's smile sharpened. "Then give me another," he whispered. He jerked his chin toward the shadowed side of the crypt, where another figure huddled. A Serwyn boy, wrists chained, eyes wide. "Choose," Ramsay Snow said softly. "Your wolf eats Theon Greyjoy, or I cut the boy." Catelyn Stark made a strangled sound, but Robb did not move. He could feel the old Stark faces watching, carved eyes unblinking, as if asking what kind of king he would be in their bones hall. Gray wind's growl deepened, a vibration that filled the crypt.
Robb Stark spoke quietly.
"Theon Greyjoy," he said, not to Ramsay but to the broken man in Ramsay's grip. "Can you move?" Theon's eyes flicked, confused. His lips trembled. He rasped. "I can." Ramsay's knife twitched. "Don't," Ramsay warned, and the warning was almost playful. Robb Stark's gaze stayed fixed on Ramsay. "You like control," Robb said softly. "You like believing every man you break stays broken." His voice sharpened. "You're wrong." In the same breath, Robb lifted his left hand, empty, and flicked it hard. A small object, dark, heavy, hit Ramsay Snow's wrist with a dull crack. Ramsay jerked in surprise. The knife slipped. Theon Greyjoy surged with sudden desperate strength, throwing his weight backward into Ramsay's chest. Gray wind exploded forward. The direwolf hit Ramsay Snow like a battering ram, teeth snapping for throat. Ramsay twisted, dragged Theon sideways, using him as a shield. Gray wind's jaws clamped onto Theon's shoulder instead, and Theon screamed, pain and terror mixing, but he did not stop pushing. He shoved Ramsay into the base of a Stark statue, stone ringing.
Robb Stark lunged.
His sword flashed in torchlight, cutting down toward Ramsay's knife hand. Ramsay jerked back, but steel still bit, slicing deep. Blood sprayed hot onto stone, staining the foot of a Stark king. Ramsay snarled, the smile finally cracking. "You!" Robb Stark slammed into him with his shoulder, driving him into the wall. Ramsay's back hit stone hard enough to knock breath loose. Theon collapsed to the floor, sobbing, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Grey wind snapped again, catching Ramsay's cloak and tearing it. The cloth ripped, and Ramsay stumbled, trying to pull free. Catelyn Stark raised her torch, eyes fierce. Barbary Dustin stepped down one stair, dagger gleaming. Ramsay Snow looked around, eyes wild now, not amused. For the first time, he looked like prey. And in Winterfell's crypts, beneath the stone eyes of dead kings, the bastard learned what it felt like when the trap closed the other way. They dragged Ramsay Snow into the Godswood because Winterfell demanded it. Not the Great Hall, not the yard where cages had hung, not the crypts where the dead watched in silence. The Godswood under the Heart Tree, where the old gods listened without priests and without gold. Snow fell lightly through bare branches. The weirwood's red leaves clung stubbornly despite winter, a blood-colored canopy over white ground. Its face stared down, carved eyes and mouth twisted in eternal witness. Ramsay Snow knelt beneath it, wrists bound in chains, his cloak torn, his hand wrapped in cloth that was already soaking through. His smile was gone. In its place was a stare that tried to look defiant and mostly looked like hate strangling fear. Northmen gathered in a rough ring, Great John Umber breathing hard, axe at his side, Daisy Mormont with her spear planted in the snow, Wyman Manderly pale with exhaustion, Barbary Dustin standing stiff, eyes bright and cold. Freed hostages huddled near guards with blankets around shoulders, watching as if afraid this too could turn into a lie. Theon Greyjoy sat under guard at the ring's edge, his shoulder bandaged, his face gray. He stared at the weirwood and looked like a man who had forgotten what it meant to be watched by gods rather than monsters. Robb Stark stood before Ramsay Snow with ice in his hands. The sword looked too large for him, even though Robb had grown into a man's strength. It was not his blade by right. Ice belonged to Eddard Stark, but Winterfell had lost too much for symbols to be treated delicately. Robb had taken it from where it had been kept, hidden and neglected, and the weight of it in his hands felt like a hand on his shoulder. Catelyn Stark stood behind him, her breath fogging, tears frozen on her lashes. She did not speak. She could not trust her voice not to break. Ramsay Snow lifted his chin. "So," he rasped, "the cursed king plays executioner." Robb Stark's gaze was cold. "The North plays justice," Robb Stark said. Ramsay's lips twitched, trying to find his old smile. "They'll still fear you," he whispered. "They'll still whisper. They'll still." "I don't care," Robb Stark said, and the quiet certainty in his voice silenced even Great John Umber's restless breath. "I cared once. It got men killed in a hall while music played." His eyes narrowed. "Now I care about this." He gestured slightly, and a Stark man stepped forward holding a parchment. Ramsay Snow's own messages nailed to flayed bodies, his threats written in crude ink. Another man held a strip of pink cloth torn from a road post. Another held the broken lock from a cage. "These," Robb Stark said, "are your deeds." Ramsay Snow's eyes flicked around the ring, calculating even now. "I'm only a bastard," he said quickly. "The Dreadfort. Roose Bolton is dead." Barbary Dustin cut in, voice sharp. "No one mourns him enough to pretend you're his rightful heir." Ramsay's gaze snapped to her, hatred flaring. "You opened your gates to him," he hissed. Barbary Dustin's mouth curled. "And I will watch you die," she replied. Grey wind stood beside Robb Stark, muzzle still stained, breath steaming. The dire wolf stared at Ramsay with the calm of a predator who had already tasted him. Ramsay's voice dropped, suddenly sly. "If you kill me," Ramsay whispered to Robb, "the North will still be broken. You can't stitch fear back into loyalty. You can't. Robb Stark stepped closer, ice's tip lowering until it hovered near Ramsay's throat. Maybe I can't stitch it, Robb Stark said softly, but I can cut out the rot. He looked around the ring, meeting eyes, Northmen who needed to see what Stark justice looked like now, men who had been told wolves were cursed. Ramsay Snow, Robb Stark said, voice carrying, you are guilty of murder, torture, hostage-taking, and treason. You threatened Winterfell's people and called it protection. You used the faith's lie to turn the North against itself. He lifted ice and the sword caught the pale light. In the name of the North, Robb Stark said, I sentence you to die. Ramsay's eyes widened, and for the first time, real fear broke through. Wait!
Robb Stark swung.
Ice fell cleanly, the way Eddard Stark had always taught. Swift, final, without spectacle. Ramsay Snow's words ended in the snow. Blood spread bright against white, steaming faintly, and the weirwood's red leaves rustled as if approving. Silence held for a heartbeat. Then someone, one of the freed hostages, let out a shuddering sob, not of grief but of release. Another man sank to his knees, shaking. Catelyn Stark closed her eyes briefly, feeling the cold air fill her lungs like a punishment and a mercy at once. Robb Stark lowered ice and stood still beneath the heart tree, the sword's weight heavy with what it had ended and what it could not. Gray wind pressed close to Robb's leg, warm fur against cold mail, and Robb's hand rested on the wolf's head for a moment. An anchor. The North watched its king execute a monster under old gods. And for the first time since the twins, the story turned into something Robb Stark could live with. Winterfell did not become whole because Ramsay Snow's head hit snow. The yard was still scarred, still churned to gray slush by boots and blood. The broken tower still leaned like a wounded memory. Fires smoldered in places where torches had fallen. Men moved among bodies, lifting the living, covering the dead, speaking in low voices that carried exhaustion more than triumph. Robb Stark walked the yard slowly, as if reacquainting himself with every stone. Here was the spot where he had watched his brothers play at swords. Here was the post where he had once tied a horse. Here were cages, now empty, where boys had shivered and tried not to scream. The sight made his stomach twist, not because he regretted killing Ramsay, but because he regretted that killing Ramsay could not erase what Ramsay had done. Catelyn Stark moved beside him, cloak wrapped tight, eyes scanning not for enemies now but for signs. Signs of Bran, of Rickon, of anything that might tell her her younger sons were not dust. She forced herself to breathe through the ache. There was no room for collapse. Daisy Mormont barked orders near the gatehouse, directing men to drag shattered timber into place, to block breaches with wagons, to raise barriers. Walls first, she snapped, then graves. Winter doesn't wait for morning. Wyman Manderly stood with Barbary Dustin near a half-burned post, their voices low. Barbary's posture was stiff, but her eyes kept flicking toward the Godswood as if she could still see Ramsay's blood in the snow. Wendell's hands shook when he spoke, not from cold, something else. Robb approached and Barbary Dustin looked up. For a heartbeat, the old hatred flickered, then settled into something colder and more workable. Winterfell is yours again, Barbary Dustin said, and it did not sound like a gift. It's the North's, Robb Stark replied. Barbary Dustin's mouth tightened. The North, she echoed. The North that believes whatever story keeps it alive. Her gaze sharpened. You made a story today. Robb Stark nodded once. I tried, he said. A Ravenmaster approached, breathless, holding a bundle of messages. Your Grace, he said. Ravens descend. Ravens from Riverrun too. Brynden Tully asks. Later, Robb Stark said, though he took the parchments, his fingers steady. He looked out at the castle's walls, at the banner staff above the gatehouse where a flayed man had hung. Raise the dire wolf, Robb Stark ordered. Men moved quickly, climbing, tearing down pink cloth, throwing it into snow like filth. A Stark banner rose in its place, black dire wolf on gray, snapping in the wind. The sight struck the yard like a breath returning to lungs. Some men cheered softly, as if afraid loudness might invite punishment. Others just stared, eyes wet. Grey Wind watched the banner rise, ears pricked. Then the dire wolf lifted his head and howled once. Long, fierce, not grief, not rage, but claim. The sound rolled over Winterfell's stones and out across the snowy fields. A declaration meant for any who still listened. Near the wall, Theon Greyjoy sat under guard, his shoulder bandaged, his face hollow. He stared at the raised direwolf and looked like a man watching a life he had once touched pass back out of reach. Robb Stark's gaze flicked toward him, and something complicated tightened in his chest. Anger, pity, the memory of betrayal, the knowledge that Theon had shoved Ramsay at the crucial second. Catelyn Stark noticed Robb's look and spoke softly. "He's broken," she said.
Robb Stark's jaw tightened.
"He broke himself?" he replied, then paused, because the truth was not that simple, not after Ramsay's chains and knives. "We'll decide what to do with him when winter doesn't have its teeth in our throats." He turned back to the ravens. He wrote quickly, short messages, hard truths. Winterfell reclaimed. Ramsay Snow dead. Hostages freed. The North must choose wolves over fear. He sealed them with wax and a direwolf stamp pressed deep. One by one the ravens took flight, black against white sky, carrying the new story outward before lions and septons could twist it. Catelyn Stark stood beside Robb in the yard's broken center, and she heard the castle breathe. Still wounded, still scarred, but alive. Robb Stark stared north, beyond Winterfell, beyond the trees, beyond the snow. "This is one monster," Robb Stark said quietly. "Not the last." Catelyn Stark felt the cold deepen, as if the world agreed. She looked at the raised direwolf banner and clung to it like a promise. Winterfell was theirs again. Now they had to keep it.